Have you ever wondered what it's like to walk away from one of America's most notorious gangs? Today, we're diving deep into the crazy journey you face when saying goodbye to the Crips. And spoiler alert, it's not just turning in a blue bandana. A thriving gang culture did not suddenly emerge in South Central Los Angeles. History dates back to the 1950s and is quite intricate. Imagine a time when the economy was tanking and many people were out of work and struggling to make ends meet, such as the years following World War II. Throw in racial tensions and young black men find themselves on the outside looking in, unable to participate in activities like Boy Scouts. Which begs the question, what did they do? They got together and created their own little gangs, or street clubs as the adults called them. Note that by the late 1960s, once prominent black nationalist organizations like the Black Panther Party had lost steam, creating a vacuum that was quickly filled by the Black Power movement. And then in 1969, we had Stanley Tookie Williams and Raymond Lee Washington. They came up with a game-changing strategy. Have gang members from both the west and east sides of South Central work together to combat other groups. You have to remember that most of these guys were only 17 at the time. In his autobiography, Blue Rage, Black Redemption, which was written years later, Williams dispelled some of the myths surrounding his life. For example, they weren't a breakaway faction of the Black Panther Party, despite common misconceptions to the contrary. Rather, they were nothing more than a loose alliance among criminal groups. A lot of people are curious about the Crips trademark, the Blue Bandana. Curtis Buddha Morrow was one of the first people involved. His entire outfit from head to toe down to his braces was blue. The Blue Bandana became a symbol of the Crips and a memorial to him after he was fatally shot in 1973. Here we are in 1978. To put it simply, by that time the Crips were not a single gang, but rather a vast organization with 45 separate sets. In addition to being heavily involved in gang warfare, these dudes were also producing large quantities of drugs, including PCP, weed, and speed. Then occurred a series of pivotal moments. Washington met his demise. It was reported that Washington was hanging out on the corner when a car pulled up and the unidentified occupants called him over to the car. Washington's associates as well as the police were aware he would never walk up to cars of people that he did not know, and most likely knew the occupants of the vehicle as he told an acquaintance that he knew them. The demise of Washington, who had always opposed rival Crips battling, created an authority vacuum. As a result, different Crip sets, such as the Rollin' 60 Neighborhood Crips and the 8 Trey Gangster Crips, began fighting amongst themselves. A lot of chaos ensued, and other Crip sets felt pressured to take sides, triggering citywide gang conflicts outside South Central. The 80s saw the introduction of crack cocaine as a new player. Distribution of the narcotic was taken up by the Crip gangs because the earnings were too good to pass up. The Crips began to spread across the country and set up shop in previously untapped markets, one of the largest gangs in the country by the late 1980s. In 1999, the Crips had established a nationwide presence with more than 600 sets and 30,000 members. The decision to join a street gang, and the Crips in particular, is rarely made on the spur of the moment. Have you ever wondered what it takes to become a part of this select group? Vice got an inside look as they followed a would-be member of the Silent Murder Crips gang in Brooklyn to his initiation ceremony. We assure you it's not easy. Get to know JT, a man who is hungry to prove himself. Initiation isn't just some hurdle, it's the gateway, man, as JT puts it. Love and establishing one's place in the group are paramount. Consider it my coming-of-age ritual. So, how does this rite of passage unfold? Just picture yourself as the meat in a beat-down sandwich, squished between 3 assailants who take turns pummeling you. Does that sound severe to you? The purpose, though, is to see if you have the mettle to make it through the inevitable hardships of life on the streets. They evaluate your resilience to see if you can withstand attacks from rival gangs or anything else that may come your way. Perhaps you're wondering, why on earth would someone go through with this on purpose? JT's motivations are more complex than they appear at first glance. He's not merely seeking social acceptance. Finding a group of people that have his back no matter what is important to him. He longs for the kind of tight-knit support system he never had growing up on the streets. To be fair, he doesn't see it as entering a dangerous new world because, well, he already is in one. When his sister was ended in a drive-by shooting, harsh truths touched close to home. The New York City Police Department has stated that initiations like this are not uncommon. If you weren't one of the founding members of a set or born into it, this is where you'd normally enter. Now with that said, with an initiation like this, no one's going to expect that these folks are letting people who join them go away easily, right? In most cases, this is true, but if you are a child, things are slightly different. So you must be familiar with the adage, you're a lifelong member of the Crips once you join. However, let's slow down a minute. Yet the findings of gang wars, the failure of enforcement tactics, and the need for effective public safety strategies beg to differ. The majority of gang members join between the ages of 12 and 15, according to the study's findings. Indeed, some are as young as 11, but here's the rub. After a year, most people have forgotten everything about their gang pride. Plus, they frequently leave with nothing except their word. Although they're technically free to go, they may still attract the attention of the gang's enemies due to their former involvement. If you're behind bars though, that's a different story. In a joint study, researchers from the University of Colorado in Boulder and Arizona State University discovered that breaking away from a gang in prison is much more difficult than doing so on the streets. What about the European Crips though? Researchers from Erasmus University Rotterdam studied the Dutch Roland 20 Crips in The Hague. It turns out that most members who wanted to dip out actually could. Just chill out, there's no need for any of that drama or petty retribution. The most typical explanation, I feel more and more like this isn't what I signed up for. You've probably heard some pretty harsh phrases like blood in, blood out, true blue to the casket, or Crip or die. These pledges appear to be absolutely crucial in nature, however the reality on the ground in both European and American Crip sets frequently contradicts these stereotypes. A sense of imminent danger exists if you choose to defect, yet your fate is not as certain as you may fear. Now let's take a look at the journey of Quando Rondo, a man who joined and then left the Crips. Envision this. Rapper Quando Rondo and his pal Lopez will never forget August 19, 2022. After being ambushed by members of an opposing gang, they find themselves in a high-stakes, perhaps fatal battle inside a petrol station. Unfortunately for his pal, he does not survive. Quando, broken and disappointed, vents his anger at his fellow members of the Rollin' 60s Crips gang on Instagram on September 7th. Did they cause it? Who knows, but one thing is certain. Quando Rondo had severed all ties to any and all street gangs. Keep in mind that Quando wasn't some greenhorn. He did not hide anything about his allegiance to the Rolling 60 neighborhood Crips, specifically the Savannah and Atlanta chapters. Years went by and he was prepared to die for his family. Okay, but now what? He just hung up his gang's banner. He publicly announced his defection via Instagram stories on that fateful September day. After a month of grieving, Quando decided he'd seen enough of his friend's demise. Some say it's a miracle that I'm still here. Lucky? Nah, he seems to say. For him, this was more than just a cruel turn of events. He was sure that someone from the inside had done it. The popular gang motto, blood in, blood out, signifies that in order to join or leave the gang, you must go through a physical experience, sometimes at the hands of your own gang members. However, Quando had zero desire to engage in such a game with people he could no longer put his trust in. I'm not going to be ambushed by any renegade group members, he emphasized emphatically, to put my attention on my loved ones. There's no allegiance here, I'm my own man, he declared, and with that, he cut off all links. I'm taking down my banner. I don't see the sense in hanging out with a crew that doesn't have my back. Quando didn't hold back since he believed his group was putting themselves in danger by hanging with the enemy. I don't need any more drama in my life. Everybody already dislikes me, he continued. From now on, everything is about my family, the only ones who would truly miss me if I were gone. You may think you know everything, but I'll let you in on a little secret. If you've been following Quando Rondo's up and down career in rap, you know that his departure from the Crips was inevitable. Quando's life has been non-stop action since 2020 when he was involved in the tragic events that led to the death of King Von. The rapper's bookings and concert cancellations began to go downward. Let's just say that he hasn't been listening to any songs about world peace and prosperity. Do you recall what happened with Lil Baby? There was just one of several serious problems that arose after King Von's demise. The final straw was when nobody in his own crew defended him. After that, Quando realized he needed to make some changes, and on August 19, 2022, he severed relations with the Crips for good. In the future, Quando Rondo and his pal Little Pad were at a Beverly Grove petrol station on the day of the disaster. 3 men in masks approached them, pistols drawn. Quando slammed on the brakes, swerved his car out of harm's way, and made it to the intersection of Beverly and La Cienega Boulevards at 5:29 p.m. Little Pad was gone by the time the police arrived. Just picture yourself witnessing the death of a close friend. There was the final straw that set Quando over the edge. "I got too much weight on my shoulders," he cried out in a fit of rage. "I'm holding my own, but there is a breaking point. I miss Little Pad terribly, and I can't let myself be weighed down by my sadness." The demise of his comrade marked the end of his involvement with criminal gangs. Continuing to lay it all on the line, Quando continued, "Nobody knows the horrors I'm going through. I was there when my friend passed away. Let's see how many of you can keep your cool after going through that." When Quando realized he needed to focus on fewer things, he stopped his emotional rant. His inner circle was drastically reduced. "My attention? Just me and my daughter," he proclaimed. "I'm living for them." Now, this dude managed to leave the gang relatively unharmed, but that isn't the story for most. Retaliation is a major issue for anyone considering this escape route. Not everyone in a gang subscribes to the adage blood in, blood out, but for the most part, this is the prevailing philosophy. If the gang sees your departure as a betrayal or a sign of weakness, it could put your life in jeopardy. The threat of being left alone is much greater than the threat of immediate bodily injury. If you cut ties with everyone, you run the risk of being rejected by the group you formerly called home. You are cut off from more than just the gang members you once ran with. You're also cut off from the wider community that once welcomed you, for better or worse. Without your former community, you are left to deal with life's challenges on your own. The situation is not helped by the fact that competing gangs continue to pose a danger. Your former associations may still haunt you, making you a potential target for members of competing gangs. This makes it such that you have to be constantly on guard for your own safety, even after you've abandoned gang culture. The law may potentially catch up with your criminal past in the form of outstanding charges or future inquiries. A further worry is the potential economic fallout. Even though gang life is plagued with danger, it may be a source of revenue for its members through a variety of dishonest means. Leaving implies giving up a major, if not primary, source of income, which might cause serious monetary problems. Finding lawful employment quickly becomes a top priority, but this is more said than done for someone with a criminal record. It'd be foolish to discount the emotional toll of leaving such a tight-knit group. Feelings of guilt, remorse, or loss are common responses to the decision, and the stress and anxiety caused by the future's uncertainty are additional factors. Without confirmation of your objectives or a final act that affects your former friends, trust becomes a luxury you may not be able to afford.